All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I have been going through a series or creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm into server-side web development. Now we're going to talk website security. As it says, security requires vigilance in all aspects of design and usage. One thing that a lot of people, I think, don't realize is what they're saying in here is it involves hardware and it involves software. All right. When you think about the things that have happened in this country with hacks that have gone through on petroleum companies, hacks that have gone through on meat companies, etc. A lot of times you'll hear on different news stations, etc., that many people think that the next war that we have won't be fought on the ground. It won't be soldiers fighting. It may be some company attempting, for example, to hurt a water supply or something like that. All right, or to be able to drain people's bank accounts or whatever. So the internet is a dangerous place. Tell you this, I may have mentioned this in an earlier lecture. I don't remember. But I'll always remember I've got a friend of mine named Doug that taught with me at the school I used to teach at in Wisconsin. We taught together there. I taught for 23 years there. He must have been there around 15 years. But he was a security taught in our security program. And the guy was a cryptologist in the U.S. Army. He retired as a lieutenant colonel, I believe. And he was a great guy, still is a great guy. All right. But one day I was sitting in his class and I just happened to be in there. He had a small class with about a dozen people in it. So I was sitting in the classroom and somebody raised their hand and said, Mr. Tabbitt, I got a new computer yesterday and I want to make sure it's 100% secure. What can I do? And without missing a beat, Mr. Tabbitt said, don't turn it on. And they were like, well, I have to do that. That's why I bought it. He said, fine. Never connected to the internet. And they said, well, again, that's kind of why I bought it, so I could send emails, receive. And he said, okay, then it can never be 100% secure because the internet is a dangerous place. All right. The purpose of website security is to prevent attacks. As it says, the more formal definition is the act or practice of protecting website from unauthorized access, use, modification, destruction, or disruption. Effective website security requires design effort across the entire website. All right. It's, again, the hardware, the software, the policies, etc. It says the good news is if you're using a server-side framework, it will almost certainly enable by default robust and well thought out defense mechanisms. Other attacks can be mitigated through your web server configuration. Again, HTTPS versus HTTP, for example. Finally, it says there are publicly available vulnerable scanner tools that can help find out if you are open to be hacked. So the rest of this article, as mentioned there, gives more details about a few of the common threats. All right. And it says this is an introductory topic. It's not at all meant to be exhaustive. All right. So some of the more common security or website threats and how they can be mitigated are shown below. One is cross-site scripting, also known as XSS, X for cross. As it says, it's a term used to describe a class of attacks that allow an attacker to inject client-side scripts through the website into the browsers of other users. Because the injected code comes to the browser from the site, the code is trusted. All right. And can do things like send the user's authorization cookie to the attacker. All right. We've all seen things like this. The old saying, it's not exactly what they're talking about here. But again, if you ever get an email from someone you don't recognize, don't open it. All right. Cross-site scripting vulnerabilities have historically been more common than probably any other type. It says they're divided into reflected and persistent based on how the site returns the injected script. With a reflected cross-site scripted vulnerability, it occurs when user content that is passed to the server is returned immediately and unmodified to display for the browser. It says, for example, consider a site search function where the search terms are encoded as URL parameters. An attacker may construct it with a malicious script. So they may put something like this in there, which says if you go out there, you might think you're going to one site, but you're really going to another site. I get things all the time on my charter account that says, for example, one that I got every day for about 3 weeks said that my American Express card had been victimized and I should go out there to check it. Well, I knew that it wasn't a problem because I don't have an American Express card. But if I did and I went out there, they probably would make a site that looked very much like the regular American Express site. And I could go out there and possibly give them information that they want that I shouldn't. Now, you probably have seen stuff like this before. But if I go out, let's see, because usually it ends up in my spam, and I have no idea if I have anything in my spam filter right now or not, but I'm going to check. So there's two things in here right now. Now, they both look okay. One is from Handy and one is from this Healthy Diets. And I have nothing in my trash. But for example, when I went in and I looked at that thing, this isn't an example, but if I went into the one that was from, said it was from American Express, I would quite often look at who the actual mail was coming from. All right. And a lot of times it would be coming from somebody who literally had another charter account. They were trying to hack me and get me to provide information that I really shouldn't be providing. So there's also a persistent cross-site scripting vulnerability, was what it says. It occurs when malicious script is stored on the website and then later redisplayed unmodified for you to execute unwillingly. For example, it says a discussion board that accepts comments that contain unmodified HTML could store a malicious script. While the data from post or GET requests is the most common, any data is potentially vulnerable. Again, the post, I've already mentioned that if you're filling out a form out on an internet site someplace and you attempt to see if you can inject JavaScript in it, something as simple as putting in script tags with an alert statement. If you can do that, that site is potentially open to an attack like this. The best defense, as it says, is to remove or disable any markup. And I showed an example of this earlier. There's Sql Injection. SQL is structured query language. And as it says, it enables malicious users to execute arbitrary SQL code on a database. All right, a successful injection attack might spoof identities, create new identities. It might do something as bad as remove, if it's your site, maybe go in and get a list of users, maybe a list of users and their passwords. Hopefully at least that information has been encrypted. It might allow you to remove tables, etc., from the database. It says this vulnerability is present if user input that is passed to an underlining SQL statement can change the meaning of the statement. So if you can go in there and take this and change it to this, notice drop table users. Now, as it says, the modified statement creates a valid SQL that deletes the users table and selects all the data from the users info table. All right. This works because the injected part completes the original statement. To avoid this sort of attack, you must ensure that any user data that's passed to SQL query cannot change the nature of the query. One way to do this, as it says, is to escape all the characters that have special meaning. So turn off their special meaning, like this. There's also cross-site forgery. Request forgery, CSRF. As it says, it allows a malicious user to execute actions using the credentials of another user. So you assume that somebody is somebody else. It says this type of attack is best explained by example. John is a malicious user who knows that a particular site allows logged in users to send money to a specified account using post request that includes the account name and the amount of money. So John constructs a form that includes bank details. You've all seen things like this. So and so is, they may, if they may attempt, for example, to say that they're a friend of yours, and they may even get that user's credentials, and they're stuck in another state or another country, and can you send them some money or whatever? All right. And there's other threats. Some of the common ones are mentioned here. Clickjacking, where a malicious user hijacks clicks meant for, as it says, a visible top-level sites and routes them someplace else. A DOS attack. You oftentimes hear about this when you get a DOS attack. For example, with the pandemic not ending, but with the pandemic opening up, so to speak, you'll hear about, for example, different baseball parks are going to full capacity. So where they used to allow 10, 20,000 people, they're now allowing 50, 60,000. And so they say that, yeah, you can start buying tickets today at 12 noon. So at 12 noon, they're inundated with thousands of requests that their server can't handle. Now, with a regular DOS attack, a lot of times those end up coming almost, it seems as though, from the same machine. All right, but the idea is the same. They're trying to flood a request site. Now, it could be with fake requests. You can get a denial of service from real requests as well. But it's the old proverbial trying to shove here 100 pounds worth into a 5-pound bag. You're overloading the system, typically with fake requests. All right, and you'll bring it down. Directory traversal, as it says in this attack, a malicious user attempts to access part of the web server file system it should not be able to access. File inclusion, where a user is able to specify an unintended file for display or execution. And command injection, which, as it says, attacks, they allow a malicious user to execute arbitrary system calls. All right. Almost all of the security exploits mentioned previously are successful when the web apps trust user, data from the browser. You should always never sounds like a misnomer, but you should never, ever trust browser data, regardless of who it's coming from. You want to always sanitize it, and you want to validate it both on the client side, if possible, but always validate it on the server side. It says a number of other concrete steps you can take. Use effective password management. Encourage strong passwords. Change them frequently, or make users change them frequently. Configure HTTPS, all right, and HTTP or HSTS for HTTP strict transport security. Keep track of the more popular threats. I was hoping they'd have something out here. Go look at the OWASP site, all right? Here's their top 10 security risks, and you're going to find a lot of the ones we've already talked about in here. Use vulnerability scanning tools. All right. So this was just meant to be an introduction. By no means was this meant to be all-inclusive. So we have now completed. In the server side, we've done the first steps. So again, I'm not going to go through the Django web development, but I am going to come back next. And you'll notice in here we'll have an overview of Express, Node.js, JavaScript overview, then an Express Node introduction, then setting up the environment. Then there'll be a tutorial which is 7 parts long, and that'll be the rest of it. All right, and that'll conclude this series of videos. So when I come back, I'm going to go to this Express Web Framework Node.js, and we'll continue there in a couple minutes.